Before we get into drawing in practice, I want to start off with some basic techniques in charcoal. First of all, I'm just using a scrap piece of paper here, something that's reasonably thick, not too thin, because you tend to give the paper a little bit more of a workout than some of the other stuff. Usually, I find a pretty good warm up just to start with a value scale. What I mean by that is that the left side is just a darker value going to a lighter value on the right side. I'm also taking another scrap piece of paper and using it as a masking device, and I'm erasing the edges of it so I can really sharpen up the edge of that value scale. But this is also a really powerful tool in using techniques and getting sharp edges within the work that you're using. I also use my fingers a lot to spread the charcoal around to blend things pretty nicely. You can see charcoal is a much more, you have a lot more contact with the image than you would, say, with pencil or ink or other things like that. And you can see I'm sort of messing around with using multiple pieces of smaller paper to create sharp edges, to create thin lines. This is a great tool for highlighting. I now just have a huge pair of scissors here that I'm just sort of creating a wave pattern here. And I can use this in the same fashion. So you can actually create organic shapes just as you can straight lines. And you can actually layer these things pretty well. Now I'm just taking that extra piece of paper that I had there, just trying to make more detailed work here. I'm actually just sort of cutting out a couple of leaf organic shapes. This is really useful if you are, say, working on something that has a consistent pattern, or you want these very small detailed things that repeat. And I can actually use this now as a masking device just like before, and I can take an eraser and bring highlights into the image that I've already created. And this starts to really create a layered approach that I think adds a lot of depth to your images. I can repeat this around, I can turn it upside down, and I can rotate it. You can see how powerful this could be if I was working with foliage or bark textures and things like that. And I can also work in an additive process here too. You can see I'm sort of just scrubbing a little charcoal in that area and then rubbing around with my fingers to make sure it goes up to the edges of all those corners. Now I'm sort of just experimenting with those edges, is that I decided to not only use these scrap pieces of paper to make straight lines in reverse, but I can actually create faint little highlights with the additive process of working back into the charcoal. I'm sort of creating these really large borders here because not only can you reverse out of the image you have with sharp edges and precise lines, but you can actually just use an eraser as a very broad device and start going that way. The great part about this is when you're using this in practice, you never have to worry about being so final with any moves that you make. So you can always go reverse back into it. All right, so what I decided to do was to set up a little still life. Here's the image of a number of things around the room. And I lit it properly there. That was a photograph. I would rather work from observation straight, but being able to light this drawing and then have dramatic lighting on this jug and things like that would be very difficult. So I'm speeding this up quite a bit. You can see that I'm actually just starting with a contour line. We've emphasized this in drawing at the very beginning of class, and you can see that this is still the basis for more involved drawings as well. So once I sort of rough in all of the contour lines of the still life, now I can start sort of inserting value. The background is very dark, so I'm sort of putting in a lot of charcoal there, but I'm also using my fingers to spread around that charcoal and really get it worked into the paper there. This is also a great tool for, say, getting some faint highlights, really getting that atmospheric perspective going with the figure in the background. So we can just barely see that figure. It's also great here for the jug here to create this contrast in value to really sort of describe the form, the three-dimensionality of the jug. And now I'm sort of starting to work into the foreground here a little bit. I wish I would have taken my time a little bit more with the fabric here. I think the jug is really believable. I'm really going back in and starting to work in little different highlights here. You can see I'm actually using paper edge just like I was before, taking the eraser, going back in there, bringing about some highlights into the jug and the foreground, really trying to work that together. So that was basically it. When you're all done, make sure you go to the spray booth. You want to spray it with this fixative, which essentially just adheres the charcoal to the paper. If you don't do this, the charcoal is just going to come right off and make a huge mess. You can see I'm just turning the light on there. Here's the finish compared to the photograph that I had, and that's about it.